He walked into that boardroom with nothing but a worn resume and shattered pride. But when the millionaire's daughter cornered him in the hallway, her diamond-ringed finger pointing at his chest, 3 words shattered every plan he'd ever made. Be my husband.
The coffee stain on Marcus Daniels' only interview shirt had dried into a map of his desperation. He'd scrubbed at it for 20 minutes in the cramped bathroom of the bus station, but the brown ghost remained, mocking him beneath his threadbare blazer. Standing now in the mirror-lined elevator of Sterling Global Industries, rising toward the 42nd floor, he could see 17 versions of his failure reflected back at him. The elevator hummed with the kind of silence only money could buy. Marcus tugged at his collar, feeling the frayed edge against his neck. 6 months ago, he'd owned 12 tailored suits. 6 months ago, he'd had a corner office, a leather chair, a secretary who brought him Ethiopian coffee in a porcelain cup. 6 months ago, his mother had been alive, and her medical bills hadn't swallowed his savings like a black hole swallows light. The elevator chimed. 42nd floor. The doors whispered open onto a reception area that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd never heard the word budget. White marble, glass walls, a chandelier that probably cost more than his childhood home. Behind a desk that could double as a landing strip sat a receptionist whose smile was as polished as the silver nameplate in front of her. Marcus Daniel? Her voice had the practiced warmth of someone who greeted desperate people every day. For the junior analyst position? Junior analyst. The words tasted like ash. He'd been a senior director at his last firm, but beggars couldn't be choosers, and Marcus had been begging. Subtly, with dignity, but begging nonetheless, for 6 months. Yes, he managed to smile. His father had taught him that. No matter how low you fall, boy, you keep your head up. Mr. Sterling will see you in conference room 3. Down the hall, last door on your right. She gestured with a manicured hand. Good luck. He'd need more than luck. The hallway stretched before him like a runway, floor-to-ceiling windows on one side revealing a view of the city that made his stomach drop. 42 floors up, the cars looked like toys, the people looked like ants. Marcus had never liked heights, but he'd learned to hide his fear the same way he'd learned to hide the holes in his socks. Conference room 3 loomed at the end of the hall, its frosted glass door revealing shadowy figures within. 3 people, maybe 4. His heart hammered against his ribs with each step. You can do this. You need this. His hand was reaching for the door handle when he heard it. A voice, crystal clear and sharp as cut glass, echoing from an open office door behind him. Tell him I don't care about the merger timeline. If Ryan wants this deal, he'll wait for my terms. Marcus glanced back. Through the partially open door, he glimpsed a woman standing with her back to him, phone pressed to her ear, silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows. Even from this distance, even from behind, she radiated the kind of confidence that came from never having heard the word no and meaning it. Dark hair cascaded down her back. Designer suit, he recognized the cut. Italian, probably Armani. Heels that could double as weapons. I don't negotiate, I dictate. She hung up without saying goodbye. Marcus turned back to conference room 3, pushing the moment from his mind. He had 17 minutes to convince Richard Sterling that a man with a 6-month employment history and a coffee-stained shirt deserved a chance. He opened the door. Before we see how Marcus's interview unfolds, drop a comment below. Have you ever walked into a situation where you knew everything was riding on one moment? Let's hear your stories. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. The interview was a kind of torture Marcus hadn't anticipated. Richard Sterling sat at the head of a glass table that could seat 20, flanked by 2 executives whose names Marcus immediately forgot. Sterling himself was everything the business magazine said he was. Silver-haired, sharp-eyed, with the kind of face that was carved with difficult decisions and early mornings. He wore his wealth quietly, simple watch, conservative suit, but it emanated from him like heat from a furnace. Mr. Daniel, Sterling's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. Tell me why there's a 6-month employment history. Marcus had practiced this answer. He'd rehearsed it in the mirror, on the bus, in the sleepless hours before dawn. But sitting here, under the weight of Sterling's gaze, the practiced words crumbled. My mother was sick. The truth came out raw. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She needed round-the-clock care. I couldn't. He stopped, swallowed. I chose to be with her in the end. The silence that followed felt like judgment. Sterling's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. But grief doesn't pay salaries, Mr. Daniel. This is a junior position. You were senior director at Daniel and Associates. Why would someone with your experience want to take such a significant step backward? Because I need to rebuild, and I'd rather rebuild with a company that values integrity over ego. Your reputation speaks for itself, Mr. Sterling. One of the executives, a woman with severe glasses, leaned forward. Your previous firm collapsed amid fraud allegations. You weren't implicated, but you were close to the center. How do we know you weren't involved? The question hit like a slap. Marcus's jaw tightened. I wasn't close to the center. I was deliberately kept in the dark like everyone else. His voice stayed level, but barely. When I discovered what was happening, I reported it to the SEC. I have the documentation if you'd like to see it. We've seen it, Sterling said quietly. We wouldn't have brought you here otherwise. The interview continued for another 30 minutes, a gauntlet of technical questions, hypothetical scenarios, probing inquiries about his methods and his values. Marcus answered each one, drawing on reserves of energy he didn't know he still had. When it finally ended, Sterling stood and extended his hand. We'll be in touch. We have 3 more candidates to interview, but... Pause, and for the first time, his expression softened almost imperceptibly. You've got integrity. That's rare. Marcus shook his hand, feeling the calluses there. A rich man who still worked with his hands. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. Thank you for your time. He walked out of that conference room with his head high and his heart somewhere in his throat. Neither hopeful nor hopeless, just suspended in the terrible space between. The hallway was empty. His footsteps echoed on the marble floor. He was halfway to the elevator when he heard the office door open behind him. You! Marcus turned. The woman from before stood in her doorway, and seeing her face on stole the air from his lungs. She couldn't have been more than 28, with features that belonged on magazine covers and eyes that belonged in a courtroom, sharp, assessing, missing nothing. Her beauty was almost aggressive, wielded like a weapon. Me? Marcus managed. She walked toward him with the stride of someone who owned every space she entered. Her heels clicked on marble like a countdown. You just interviewed with my father? Oh, this was Olivia Sterling. I'd seen her photo in business journals, usually attached to headlines about hostile takeovers and corporate warfare. The heir apparent to Sterling Global Industries, the woman who'd reportedly made a board member cry during a presentation. I did, Marcus said carefully. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something expensive and shop. Her eyes traveled over him with clinical precision, cataloging everything. The worn blazer, the coffee stain he'd tried to hide, the shoes he'd polished until they gleamed, despite their age. You have good posture, despite everything, and you didn't lie about your situation. I was listening outside the conference room. You could have made excuses, blamed others. You didn't. Marcus said nothing. What was there to say? Olivia stopped in front of him again, so close now that he could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. I have a proposition for you, Marcus Daniel. I haven't been offered the job yet. Forget the job, she waved her hand dismissively. I'm offering you something better. His heart started to hammer. What? She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small card, cream-colored, expensive stock, with an address embossed in gold. Come to this address tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. Marcus took the card, confused. What is this about? Olivia tilted her head, studying him with those cornroom eyes. Then she said the 3 words that would change everything. Be my husband. The words hung in the air between them like smoke after a gunshot. Marcus's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I'm sorry, what? You heard me. Olivia's expression remained perfectly composed, as if she just asked him about the weather. Be my husband. This is a joke.
He looked around the empty hallway, half expecting cameras, a film crew, someone to jump out and yell that he'd been pranked. I'd joke about business propositions. Marriage isn't a business proposition. Her eyebrow arched. Isn't it? People marry for money, security, citizenship, social status. Half the marriages in our circle are transactions dressed with white dresses and cake. At least I'm being honest about it. Marcus took a step back, his mind reeling. You don't even know me. I know enough. She counted on her fingers. You're honest. You reported fraud when you could have stayed silent. You're loyal. You sacrificed your career for your mother. You're desperate, which means you'll take me seriously. And most importantly, she paused, her gaze sweeping over him again. You clean up well. Good bone structure. You'll photograph nicely. Photograph? For the wedding announcements, the society pages. She said it like it was obvious. Look, I don't have time for a lengthy explanation in a hallway. That's what tomorrow's meeting is for. 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. She turned to walk away. Wait, Marcus's voice stopped her. Why me?
Have anyone. Anyone I choose would have strings attached. Family expectations, social connections, hidden agendas. She looked back over her shoulder. You're an outsider. You need what I'm offering, and I need what you can provide. It's clean, transactional. What exactly are you offering? Now she did smile, and it was like watching ice crack. Come tomorrow and find out. Or don't. Throw away the card, take your chances with the junior analyst position, and spend the next decade climbing back to where you used to be. She paused in her office doorway. Your choice, Marcus Daniel. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Marcus stood alone in the hallway, the card burning in his hand like a live coal. His reflection stared back at him from the glass walls, a man with a coffee-stained shirt and questions he couldn't answer. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. He stepped inside and pressed the button for the ground floor, watching the numbers descend. 42, 41, 40. His phone buzzed. A text from his landlord. Rent is 3 days late. Pay by Friday or I'm filing eviction. 39, 38, 37. Marcus looked at the card. The address was in the wealthy district, where homes had gates and gardens and price tags that required multiple commas. 36, 35. Be my husband. 34, 33. He should throw the card away. This was insane. You didn't marry strangers, no matter how desperate you were. This was the kind of thing that happened in movies, in romance novels, not in real life. 32, 31. But then again, 6 months ago, he wouldn't have believed he'd be eating crackers for dinner either. 30, 29. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors whispered open. Marcus walked out into the lobby, into the sunshine, into the afternoon heat that hit him like a wall. He walked to the bus stop, the card still clutched in his hand, and waited for the number 47 that would take him back to his efficiency apartment with its peeling wallpaper and broken air conditioning. On the bus, squeezed between a woman with grocery bags and a teenager with headphones, Marcus pulled out his phone. He typed the address from the card into Google Maps. The image that loaded made his breath catch. A 3-story mansion with white columns, manicured lawns, a fountain in the circular driveway. The kind of place that had been in families for generations. He looked out the window at the passing city, pawn shops and check-cashing places, and people waiting at bus stops just like his. 2 different worlds separated by 42 floors and 1,000,000 miles. His thumb hovered over the card, ready to tear it in half. Instead, he slipped it into his wallet. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He lay on the thin mattress in his studio apartment, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a dragon or maybe a dog, depending on how you tilted your head. The window AC unit rattled and wheezed, pushing out air that was only slightly cooler than the air it pulled in. Be my husband. What kind of person made an offer like that? What kind of person accepted? He thought about his mother, about those last weeks when the morphine made her confused, but the pain made her lucid. She'd gripped his hand with surprising strength and whispered, "Promise me you'll live, Marcus. Not just survive. Live." Was this living? Or was this just survival with extra steps? At 3 a.m., he gave up on sleep and opened his laptop, the one luxury he'd refused to sell even when the eviction notices started coming. He typed Olivia Sterling into the search bar. The results flooded his screen, hundreds of articles, photos, profiles. He started reading. Sterling Harris closes $2 billion acquisition. Olivia Sterling, the woman who makes billionaires nervous. Inside the ruthless business mind of Richard Sterling's daughter. Photo after photo showed her at galas, board meetings, ribbon cuttings, always impeccably dressed, always with that same sharp expression, like she was calculating something no one else can see. In every image, she stood alone. No partner, no date, no one close enough to touch her. One article from 6 months ago caught my eye. Sterling Harris ends engagement to tech mogul. He wasn't serious about building an empire, sources say. Marcus clicked through to the full story. Olivia had been engaged to Jonathan Hartwick, heir to a tech fortune, until she'd called it off 3 weeks before the wedding. The article quoted unnamed sources saying Hartwick wanted her to soften her image and focus on family instead of hostile takeovers. The engagement lasted 4 months. Marcus closed his laptop as the first light of dawn crept through his window. His phone alarm would ring in 2 hours. He had to decide, throw away the card or show up at that mansion at 9 a.m. sharp. He thought about the coffee stain, the addiction notice, the empty refrigerator, the weight of his mother's last words. "Promise me you'll live." At 8:47 a.m., Marcus stood outside the iron gates of the Sterling mansion, his finger hovering over the intercom button. He was wearing the same suit from yesterday. He didn't have another one, but he'd washed the shirt by hand and dried it with a hairdryer, spending 40 minutes trying to make the coffee stain less obvious. His shoes were polished. His jaw was shaved. He looked, he hoped, like a man who deserved to walk through these gates. He pressed the button. A voice crackled through. "Name?" "Marcus Daniel. I have a 9 o'clock appointment with Olivia Sterling." The gate swung open with a low hum. The driveway curved through gardens that belonged in magazines, roses and hedges trimmed with geometric precision, a fountain with actual marble nymphs, old-growth trees that must have been planted before his grandparents were born. The mansion loomed ahead, white and pristine, its windows reflecting the morning sun like hostile eyes. A woman in a crisp uniform answered the door before he could knock. "Mr. Daniel, Miss Sterling is expecting you in the west parlor. This way, please." Marcus followed her through a foyer with a chandelier that could crush a car, down a hallway lined with oil paintings of stern-faced Sterling ancestors, into a room that was somehow both opulent and cold. Silk sofas, Persian rugs, a fireplace that could roast a whole pig. Olivia stood by the window, backlit by the morning sun, wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than his monthly rent used to be. She turned as he entered. "You came. Didn't you think I would?" "I gave it 60-40 odds." She gestured to one of the sofas. "Sit. We have things to discuss."
Marcus sat, feeling the silk upholstery beneath his palms, smooth and foreign. Olivia remained standing, pacing slowly in front of the fireplace like a lawyer addressing a jury. "Let me explain my situation," she began, her voice crisp and businesslike. "My father is dying." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "I'm sorry?" She held up a hand. "Save the condolences. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. 6 months, maybe 8 if the experimental treatments work. He's known for 3 months. I've known for 2. Marcus thought of his own mother, of those final months. I'm sorry." "The problem," Olivia continued as if he hadn't spoken, "isn't his death. Death is inevitable. The problem is his will." She pulled a folder from a side table and dropped it on the coffee table between them. Marcus didn't touch it. "My father built Sterling Global from nothing. A single warehouse in Newark 40 years ago, now a multinational empire worth $12 billion. He's old-fashioned, traditional, and despite the fact that I've increased company profits by 37% since joining the board, despite the fact that I've closed deals he said were impossible, despite everything I've done," her jaw tightened, "he doesn't believe a woman should run his company, not alone." "That's archaic? Sexist?" "Yes, to both." she began pacing again. His will stipulates that control of Sterling Global passes to me only if I'm married. If I'm single when he dies, the company goes to a board of trustees, men he's selected, men who will undo everything I've built. They'll make the company safe, conservative, boring. She spat the word like poison. They'll destroy it. Marcus watched her move, seeing the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands clenched and unclenched. Beneath the ice there was rage. "So you need a husband," he said slowly. "I need a husband who won't interfere, who won't think marriage gives him the right to opinions about my business decisions, who won't try to control me or change me or soften my image." She stopped pacing and looked directly at him. "I need a business arrangement, not a romance. And what do I get?" "Money," she said it simply. $5 million, paid in full the day after the wedding, a penthouse apartment in the city, title in your name, yours to keep after the arrangement ends, a position at Sterling Global with a salary of $300,000 a year, full benefits, and after 2 years, a quiet divorce and another $3 million as a settlement. Marcus's mouth went dry. $8 million, financial security for the rest of his life. Why 2 years? Long enough to satisfy the will's requirements, long enough that it looks legitimate, short enough that we both get what we want and move on. She sat down across from him, leaning forward. "I've had you investigated, Marcus. I know about your mother's medical bills. I know about the eviction notice. I know you're barely eating. I know you're desperate." Heat flooded his face, shame and anger mixed together. "So you're preying on that desperation. I'm offering you a way out." Her voice sharpened. "Don't play the victim. You walked through those gates. You're sitting on that sofa. You haven't said no." She was right. He hated that she was right. What exactly would this marriage entail? Public appearances, charity galas, business dinners. We'd live together, separate bedrooms, obviously. We'd maintain the appearance of a normal marriage for anyone watching, but behind closed doors, we live separate lives. You do your job, I do mine. No interference, no expectations beyond what's necessary for appearances. And what if I say no? Olivia leaned back, studying him. Then you walk out that door, and we never speak again. You'll probably get the junior analyst position. My father was impressed with you. You'll spend the next decade rebuilding your career, maybe make it back to where you were, maybe not, but you'll have your pride intact if that's worth more than financial security. She let that hang in the air between them. Marcus looked around the room, at the oil paintings, the silk curtains, the kind of wealth that whispered instead of shouting. He thought about his efficiency apartment with its rattling AC and water-stained ceiling. He thought about crackers for dinner and the bus that smelled of despair. He thought about his mother's last words. "Live, Marcus. Don't just survive." Okay, Mom, he was living. God help him, he was living. Marcus just made a choice that will change everything. Have you ever made a decision you couldn't take back? One that terrified and excited you in equal measure? Drop a comment and share your story. Let's see who else has stood at a crossroads. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then, "Good. Be at my lawyer's office tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. We'll handle the paperwork." She rattled off an address. "Wear something presentable. I only have 1 suit. Then I'll have 3 sent to your apartment this evening. Size 42 regular, correct?" He shouldn't have been surprised that she knew his measurements. "Yes." "The wedding is 2 weeks. Small ceremony, immediate family only. My father's health won't permit waiting longer." Her voice remained brisk, businesslike. "Questions?" "I have 1,000 questions." He asked the one that mattered most. "Will your father know that this is what it is?" Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Not soft, but softer. "No. As far as he's concerned, we met, we fell in love quickly, we're getting married. He has so little time left. I won't take that from him." Something in Marcus's chest tightened. Beneath the Ice Queen exterior, there was a daughter who loved her father. "Okay, I can do that. 7 a.m., Marcus. Don't be late." She hung up. Marcus sat on that bench as the sun began to set, as the children were called home by their mothers, as the old man scattered the last of his breadcrumbs and shuffled away. He sat there until the streetlights flickered on, until the park grew dark and quiet. Then he stood, pocketed his phone, and walked towards his apartment, towards his old life that had exactly 12 more hours to exist before it disappeared forever. When he opened his door at 8 p.m., 3 garment bags hung from his doorknob. Designer suits, Italian fabric, the kind he used to wear before the world fell apart. He hung them in his closet next to his one coffee-stained suit and stared at them for a long time. Then he opened his laptop one more time and typed a search, "How to survive a fake marriage." The results were useless. Articles about green card marriages and tax fraud and sitcom plot lines. Nothing about what to do when you agree to marry a woman who sees you as a solution to a problem, not a person. His father's voice echoed in his head. "No matter how low you fall, boy, you keep your head up." But how high could you climb if you sold your dignity to get there? At 6:30 a.m. the next morning, Marcus stood outside a glass tower in the financial district, wearing one of the new suits, charcoal gray, perfect fit, probably worth more than his security deposit. He felt like an imposter. The law offices of Morrison, Daniel, and Associates occupied the entire 40th floor. Marcus took the elevator up, watching the city shrink beneath him through the glass walls. At this height, you couldn't see the homeless man who slept outside the bus station. You couldn't see the check-cashing places or the pawn shops. From up here, everything looked clean. Olivia was already in the conference room when he arrived, sitting on a long table covered with documents. She wore a navy suit and reading glasses, looking every inch of a corporate warrior. A man in his 60s sat beside her, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, expensive watch. "Marcus," she didn't stand. "This is Gerald Morrison, my attorney. Sit, we have a lot to cover." For the next 2 hours, Gerald walked them through paperwork that made Marcus's head spin. Prenuptial agreement, non-disclosure agreement, financial arrangements, property rights, exit clauses. Initial here, sign here, date there. Marcus's hand cramped from signing his name so many times. Each signature felt like sealing a bargain with the devil, except the devil wore Prada and had remarkably good posture. "The prenup is non-negotiable," Gerald explained, sliding another document across the table. "In the event of divorce, Mr. Daniel receives the agreed-upon settlement, $3 million, plus the penthouse apartment. He has no claim to any Sterling family assets, businesses, or properties beyond what's explicitly stated." "I understand," Marcus said. "And the NDA," Gerald's voice hardened. "Any disclosure of the true nature of this arrangement, to press, to family, to anyone, results in forfeiture of all financial compensation and potential legal action. This agreement is ironclad, Mr. Daniel. Break it, and you'll wish you'd stayed poor." Olivia shot Gerald a look. "He understands?" "I just want to be clear. He understands." Her voice left no room for argument. They signed more papers. Marcus's signature became a scrawl and barely legible, then just a mark that vaguely resembled his name. Finally, Gerald stacked the documents and slid a folder towards Marcus. "Welcome to the Sterling family, Mr. Daniel. Try not to ruin it." He left the room. Marcus and Olivia sat alone in the sudden silence, surrounded by the contracts that bound them together for the next 2 years. "Well," Marcus said eventually, "that was romantic." To his surprise, Olivia laughed, a short, sharp sound quickly suppressed. "Romance is for people who have time for illusions. We don't." She stood and gathered her briefcase. "I've arranged for movers to pack your apartment this afternoon. You'll move into the penthouse tonight. I'll be there by 8 to go over household arrangements and discuss the wedding details." "Tonight?" "We have 12 days, Marcus. Invitations have already been sent. My father needs to see us together, see that we're compatible." "Are we compatible?" Olivia looked at him over her reading glasses, and for a moment, just a moment, he saw something almost like humor in her eyes. "I suppose we'll find out." She walked towards the door, then stopped. "Marcus, thank you for saying yes."
"Yes, I know it's not normal, but it's necessary, and I won't forget that you're helping me." Then she was gone, heels clicking down the hallway, leaving Marcus alone in a conference room 40 floors above the city, surrounded by the signed contracts of his new life. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had held his mother's in her last moments, that had scrubbed at coffee stains in bus station bathrooms, that had just signed away 2 years of his life to a woman who might as well have been a stranger. Live, Marcus. Don't just survive. Okay, Mom. He was living. God help him, he was living. The penthouse occupied the entire 45th floor of the Millennium Tower, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a 360-degree view of the city. Marcus stood in the living room, if you could call a space the size of a basketball court a living room, and tried to remember how to breathe. Marble floors, designer furniture, a kitchen with appliances that probably required engineering degrees to operate, art on the walls that looked like it belonged in museums, and everywhere that smell, the smell of money, of spaces that had never known the scent of desperation. "Your bedroom is down the east hall, second door on the right," Olivia had said when the elevator opened directly into the penthouse. She barely looked at him, too busy typing on her phone. "Mine is west hall, last door. The middle rooms are guest spaces, office, gym. Stay out of my office unless invited." Now she stood at the dining table, a slab of black walnut that could seat 12, spreading out fabric swatches, invitation mock-ups, and what looked like architectural diagrams. "The wedding will be at my father's estate," she said without preamble as Marcus approached. "Garden ceremony, 200 guests. Small by sterling standards, but Dad's too weak for anything larger." She pointed to a fabric swatch. "Navy or charcoal for your suit." Marcus looked at the swatches. They looked identical. "Charcoal? Good choice. It photographs better." She made a note on her tablet. "The reception will be in the main house. Dinner, dancing, the usual performances. You'll need to learn to waltz." "I know how to waltz." She looked up, surprised. "You do?" "My mother taught me. She was traditional about some things." The memory hit him unexpectedly, standing on his mother's feet in their tiny living room, her laughing as she counted steps, his father playing big band music from a scratchy record player. Something flickered across Olivia's face. "Good, that's less thing to arrange." She returned to her tablet. "Guest list. My father, obviously. His sister Margaret, my aunt, you'll hate her, everyone does. The board members and their spouses, a few business associates, my college roommate, Sarah, who will definitely ask why she wasn't told about you sooner." "What do I tell her?" "That we kept it quiet, that we wanted to be sure before making it public." She slid a dossier across the table. "Here, study this, our story." Marcus opened it. Inside was a timeline, meticulously detailed. "Met at Sterling Global, your interview 3 weeks ago. I asked you to dinner to discuss a consulting project. Dinner turned into 4 hours of conversation. Second date 3 days later, coffee shop in Brooklyn. Third date, I invited you to the estate to meet my father. He approved. You proposed 2 days ago. I said yes immediately." "We've known each other for 3 weeks," Marcus said slowly. "And we're getting married?" "When you know, you know." Her tone was flat, rehearsed. "That's what people say, isn't it? Love at first sight, destiny, all that nonsense." "Your father will believe that?" "My father is dying, Marcus. He wants to believe I've found happiness before he goes. He'll believe what he needs to believe." She closed her tablet. "We'll have dinner with him tomorrow night, 7 p.m. He'll want to get to know you, ask questions about your intentions, your background. Be honest about everything, except the arrangement. He's dying, but he's not stupid." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of it settling on his shoulders. "What about your mother?" "Dead. Car accident when I was 12. She said it matter-of-factly, but her hand tightened around her tablet. "Anything else?" "Yes." Marcus met her eyes. "If we're going to convince people we're in love, we need to be able to stand in the same room without looking like we're negotiating a hostage situation." The corner of her mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "Point taken. What do you suggest?" "We spend time together. Real time. Not just going over contracts and wedding plans. We learn about each other. Find common ground." "This isn't a real marriage, Marcus." "No, but it needs to look like one, and right now we look like strangers who just met in an elevator." Olivia was quiet for a moment,
studying him with those sharp eyes. "Fine. Every evening, 7 to 9 p.m. We'll have dinner together, talk, practice being whatever we need to be." "Okay. But don't mistake this for friendship," she warned. "This is still a business arrangement." "I know." She stood, gathering her things. "I have a conference call in 20 minutes. There's food in the fridge, actual food, not crackers. Help yourself. The movers will finish bringing your things by 6. Unpack, settle in. And Marcus, thank you for agreeing to this. I know it's not easy." Then she disappeared down the West Hall, and Marcus was alone in a penthouse that cost more than most people's houses, with a refrigerator full of food he didn't have to ration and a bedroom he hadn't even seen yet. He walked down the East Hall, second door on the right. The bedroom was larger than his entire old apartment. King-sized bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, walk-in closet already stocked with clothes in his size, suits, casual wear, shoes still in boxes, attached bathroom with heated marble floors and a shower that had more settings than his old car. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. 12 days ago, he'd been eating crackers for dinner. Now he was living in luxury, engaged to a woman who saw him as a contract clause, preparing to lie to a dying man about love. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Sarah Mendez, Olivia's friend. Heard the news. So excited to meet you tomorrow. She's been so secretive about you." Marcus stared at the message. Tomorrow. Right. Olivia had mentioned something about meeting her friend. He typed back, "Looking forward to meeting you too." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Fair warning, I'm going to interrogate you. Liv's my best friend, and she never falls this fast for anyone. I need to make sure you're worthy." Worthy? Marcus almost laughed. He was many things, but worthy wasn't on the list. He spent the afternoon unpacking his meager possessions. They looked ridiculous in that massive closet, his threadbare t-shirts hanging next to designer suits like refugees in a palace. He kept his mother's things separate, her favorite scarf, the watch his father had given her, an album from before the cancer. At 7 p.m. sharp, Olivia emerged from her office. "Ready for dinner?" They sat at opposite ends of the long dining table, plates of gourmet food prepared by a chef Marcus hadn't even known was there, spread between them like a no-man's land. "So," Olivia said, cutting into her salmon with surgical precision, "tell me about yourself, the real you, not the resume version." "What do you want to know?" "Everything. If we're going to convince people we're in love, I need to know more than your employment history." She took a bite, chewed, swallowed. "Start with your family." Marcus set down the fork. "Father died when I was 16. Heart attack. He was a contractor, worked with his hands all his life. Mom was a teacher. Elementary school. She loved it." "Any siblings?" "No, just me." "And when your mother got sick?" "I quit my job, moved in with her, spent 6 months watching her die by inches." His voice came out rougher than he intended. "The bills came faster than I could pay them. I sold everything. My car, my furniture, my watch. Wasn't enough. By the time she died, I had nothing left except debt and an empty apartment." Olivia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "I'm sorry." "You already said that." "I'm saying it again." She set down her fork. "My mother died when I was 12. Brain aneurysm. 1 minute she was laughing at something on TV, the next she was gone. Dad threw himself into work. I threw myself into school, then into the company. We grieved separately." "That must have been lonely." "It was efficient. Grief is messy, inefficient. It interferes with productivity." "Grief is human." "Yes, well, I'm not very good at human." They ate in silence for a moment. Then Marcus asked, "What happened with your last engagement? The tech guy, Hartwick?" Olivia's jaw tightened. "You researched me." "You investigated me. Seems fair." She considered this. "Jonathan wanted me to be less. Less ambitious, less aggressive, less me. He wanted me to smile more, speak less, wear softer colors. She laughed bitterly. He wanted a wife who would host dinner parties and look good in photos. I wanted a partner who understood that I'm not decoration. Marcus raised his water glass.
So you ended it. 3 weeks before the wedding. Caused a scandal. The society pages had a field day. She met his eyes. But I'd rather be scandalous than diminished. Marcus raised his water glass. To not being diminished. Something like respect flickered in her eyes. She raised her glass. To not being diminished. They clinked glasses. Your turn, Olivia said. Tell me something else, something not in the background check. Marcus thought for a moment. I wanted to be an architect, before business school, before everything. I used to draw buildings in the margins of my notebooks. My father said it wasn't practical, that I needed a real career, so I became an analyst instead. Do you regret it? Sometimes. Mostly, I wonder who I'd have been if I'd been braver. Olivia set down her glass carefully. We're all wondering that, Marcus, who we'd be if we were braver. The admission hung between them, unexpected and raw. The next evening, Sarah Mendez arrived at 6 p.m. with a bottle of wine and enough energy to power a small city. She was petite and curvy, with dark curls and a smile that seemed incapable of being anything but genuine. You must be Marcus. She pulled him into a hug before he could react. Oh my God, you're real. Liv texted me about you 3 weeks ago, and I thought she was punking me. She doesn't date, like, ever. And then suddenly she's engaged, and I'm like, who is this man and what kind of sorcery did he use? Sarah, Olivia said from behind them, her voice carrying a warning. What? I'm excited. Sarah released Marcus and turned to hug Olivia. You're glowing, babe, like actually glowing. It's unsettling. They moved to the living room. Sarah poured wine with the enthusiasm of someone who believed any gathering could be improved with alcohol. So, Marcus, she settled onto the sofa, tucking her feet under her. How did you do it? How did you break through the Ice Queen exterior? I'm right here, Olivia said dryly. I know, that's why I called you an Ice Queen to your face instead of behind your back. Growth, Sarah winked. But seriously, Marcus, our girl here has had men throwing themselves at her since college. Rich men, powerful men, men who could buy small countries. She's rejected all of them. So what made you different? Marcus glanced at Olivia, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. They'd rehearsed this, but looking at Sarah's open, hopeful face, the rehearsed words felt wrong. I didn't try to change her, he said simply. I didn't need her to be less so I could be more. Sarah's smile faltered, grew. Oh, that's actually perfect. She looked at Olivia. He's a keeper, Liv. I know, Olivia said softly. They spent 2 hours talking, Sarah regaling them with stories about college, about the time Olivia had made a professor cry during a debate, about spring break trips and late-night study sessions. Marcus watched Olivia laugh, really laugh, and realized he'd never seen her like this, unguarded, almost relaxed. When Sarah finally left, I have an early meeting, but we're doing brunch soon, all of us. Olivia closed the door and leaned against it. That went well, Marcus offered. She liked you. Sarah doesn't like anyone. She likes you. Sarah doesn't count. She's legally obligated to like me. We made a blood pact in freshman year. But she was smiling as she said it. They cleaned up the wine glasses in comfortable silence. At the kitchenette, their hands brushed, reaching for the same glass. Olivia pulled back like she'd been burned. Sorry, Marcus said. No, we'll need to get used to that. Touching, for appearances. She dried her hands on a towel, not looking at him. Tomorrow, we meet my father. He'll want to see us, together, comfortable with each other. Are we? Comfortable with each other? Olivia finally met his eyes. I don't know. Are we? Marcus took a step closer. Not too close, but closer. We're getting there. She didn't step back. We have 10 days. Then we'd better practice. He held out his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. Her palm was cool, her grip firm. They stood there in the kitchen, holding hands like awkward teenagers, and Marcus thought,
This is insane. This whole thing is insane. But Olivia's hand was real in his, and tomorrow they'd sit across from a dying man and pretend to be in love, and in 10 days they'd stand in front of 200 people and promise forever. The lies were piling up like debt. Marcus just hoped they could afford to pay them. The Sterling estate looked different at night. Fairy lights wound through the garden trees. The fountain was illuminated from below, water glowing gold. The mansion itself blazed with light from every window, warm and welcoming. Marcus's palms were sweating in the car. Olivia drove her Tesla in silence, her jaw tight, her hands gripping the steering wheel like it might try to escape. "Are you nervous?" "No." "You're white-knuckling the steering wheel." Her grip loosened fractionally. "I haven't told him about us directly. He knows we're coming to dinner. He doesn't know why." "When are you going to tell him?" "Tonight. We'll have dinner. We'll tell him together. And then," she voice caught, "and then we'll see if I can lie to a dying man without breaking." Marcus reached over and covered her hand. She startled, but didn't pull away. "We don't have to do this," he said quietly. "I can leave. You can find another way." "There is no other way." But she didn't move her hand. "And you signed the contracts." "Contracts can be broken." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and she saw fear in her eyes, raw, undisguised fear. "Please don't. I need this to work." "Okay, then let's go tell your father you're getting married." They walked to the door together. A nurse answered, young, professional, her smile practiced. "Miss Sterling, Mr. Sterling is in the study. He's having a good day today." They found Richard Sterling in a leather chair by the fireplace, a blanket over his lap despite the summer heat. He looked smaller than he had in that conference room 3 weeks ago, frailer. The cancer was eating him from the inside out, but his eyes were still sharp when they landed on Marcus. "So, you came back." "I did, sir." "And you brought my daughter, together. Interesting." He gestured to the sofa across from him. "Sit, both of you." They sat. Olivia's hand found Marcus's, gripping tightly. For appearances or for courage, he wasn't sure. Richard studied them with the intensity of a man who'd built an empire by reading people. "You're going to tell me something important." "Dad," Olivia began, her voice steady despite the tension in her body. "Marcus and we've been seeing each other since his interview." "Have you now?" Not a question. "Yes, and he asked me." She looked at Marcus. This was his cue. Marcus took a breath. "Mr. Sterling, I've asked Olivia to marry me. She said yes. We wanted to tell you in person." The silence that followed felt like it lasted a year. Richard's expression didn't change. He looked from Marcus to Olivia and back again. 3 weeks. You've known each other 3 weeks." "Yes, sir." "And you want to marry my daughter?" "I love your daughter, sir." The lie came easier than Marcus expected. Or maybe it wasn't entirely a lie. He was starting to care about her in ways he hadn't anticipated. "Do you?" He leaned forward slightly. "Tell me why." Marcus felt Olivia tense beside him. This wasn't in the script. They'd rehearsed answers about timing and certainty, about knowing when something was right, but Richard wasn't asking about timing. "She's brilliant," Marcus said the words, coming from somewhere honest. "She's fierce, and she doesn't apologize for it. She's built something extraordinary at Sterling Global, and she doesn't need anyone's permission to be exceptional." He met Richard's eyes. "I'm not asking to marry her because I want to control her or change her. I'm asking because I want to stand beside her while she changes the world." Richard's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "And you, Olivia, why him?" Olivia's hand tightened in Marcus's. "Because he sees me, not the Sterling name, not the money, not the potential business advantage, just me, and he doesn't need me to be less so I could be more." Father and daughter looked at each other across the space of the study, and Marcus felt like an intruder on something private. "When?" Richard asked finally. 2 weeks, Olivia said. "At the estate, small ceremony. I know it's fast, but I'm dying. You don't have to dance around it." Richard's voice was gentle. 2 weeks is perfect. I'll be there." "Dad." "I'll be there, Olivia, even if they have to wheel me down the aisle in a hospital bed." He smiled, and it transformed his face.
My little girl, getting married. Your mother would be so happy. Olivia's eyes glistened. She would? She always worried you were too much like me, too focused on work, not enough on life. He looked at Marcus again. You'll take care of her. Yes, sir. And you'll let her take care of herself. Let her run the company the way she's meant to. Marcus understood what he was really asking. I'm not trying to take anything from her, Mr. Sterling. I'm just trying to give her support when she needs it. Richard nodded slowly. Then you have my blessing and my gratitude. He reached for a folder on the side table. There's something I need to give you both. My will, updated this morning. Olivia got very still. Dad, you don't need to. Yes, I do. He opened the folder, pulled out papers. Sterling Global passes to you, Olivia. Full control. No trustees, no conditions. I've removed the marriage requirement. The room seemed to stop breathing. What? Olivia's voice was barely a whisper. Because I was afraid of leaving you alone, afraid you'd bury yourself in work like I did after your mother died, and wake up one day realizing
No one to share it with. He looked at Marcus, then back to his daughter. But you found someone on your own, without my will forcing your hand. That's how I know it's real. Marcus felt the floor drop out from under him. The will had been changed. The marriage requirement was gone, which meant Olivia didn't need him anymore, which meant this whole arrangement was pointless. Olivia's face had gone pale. She looked at Marcus, and in her eyes he saw panic and something else, something he couldn't quite name. Dad, I need to... Excuse me. She practically ran from the room. Marcus started to follow, but Richard's voice stopped him. Let her go. She needs a moment. He studied Marcus with renewed interest. You didn't know about the will change. No, sir. But you agreed to marry her anyway, even thinking it was a condition. Marcus's throat was tight. I love her, sir. The will doesn't change that. Richard smiled. Good answer. Now go find her before she does something stupid like calling off the wedding. My daughter has a tendency to overthink things. Marcus found Olivia in the garden, standing by the fountain, her arms wrapped around herself. She didn't turn when he approached. So, that was unexpected. Yes. You're free. The contracts are void if the marriage requirement is removed. You can walk away. Keep the suits, keep the signing bonus from the paperwork. Consider it payment for your trouble. Marcus moved to stand beside her. Is that what you want? For me to walk away? I don't know what I want. I don't know anything anymore. Do you want to marry me? She finally looked at him. We barely know each other, Marcus. This was supposed to be business, clean, transactional. That's not an answer. I don't have an answer. The words burst from her. I had a plan. I had control. And now everything is... She gestured helplessly. Now I don't know what's real and what's performance. Marcus took her hand. She let him. Then let's figure it out. We have 10 days until the wedding. Let's spend them getting to know each other, really getting to know each other. Not as a contract, not as a business arrangement, just as people. And then we decide, together, if we want to go through with it. Olivia searched his face. Why would you stay? You don't owe me anything. Maybe I want to. Maybe I'm curious about who we could be if we gave this a real chance. That's insane. Probably, he smiled. But this whole thing has been insane from the start. Why stop now? She almost laughed. Almost. You're serious. 10 days, Olivia. Let's see what happens. She looked back at the house where her father waited, at the garden where they'd stand in 10 days and make promises, at Marcus, who was holding her hand and offering something far more terrifying than a business arrangement. He was offering the possibility of something real. Okay, she whispered. 10 days.
The next 9 days passed like a fever dream. They had breakfast together every morning, not at opposite ends of the dining table anymore, but side by side at the kitchen island, sharing sections of the newspaper and arguing about politics. Olivia was a fiscal conservative with surprising liberal social views. Marcus was the opposite.
They debated over coffee and croissants, and somewhere around day 3, Marcus realized he looked forward to losing arguments with her. They worked during the day, Olivia at Sterling Global, Marcus starting his new position as a consultant, a role created specifically for him, with an office 3 doors down from Olivia's. But every evening at 7, they had dinner together, and after dinner, they talked. "Tell me about your first business deal," Marcus said on day 4. Olivia's eyes lit up. They always did when she talked about work. "I was 19, college sophomore. There was a small tech startup near campus. Brilliant idea, terrible execution. I convinced my father to front me $200,000. He thought I was insane." "Were you?" "Probably. But I bought 30% of the company, installed new management, and sold my shares 3 years later for $4 million. She smiled at the memory. "My father stopped questioning my instincts after that." "What happened to the company?" "They're worth $2 billion now. I still have stock options." She took a sip of wine. "Your turn. Tell me about something you built. Not a financial model, something with your hands." Marcus thought back. "When I was 16, after my dad died, I built my mother a garden bench. Spent 3 months on it, cutting the wood, sanding it smooth, carving her initials into the backrest. It wasn't perfect. The joints were uneven, the finish was streaky, but she cried when she saw it." "Do you still have it?" "No. Had to sell it when the medical bills started coming. Some stranger bought it at the estate sale for $40. His throat tightened. "I hope they're taking care of it." Olivia's hand found his across the table. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "That you had to sell your memories to survive." It was the most tender thing she'd ever said to him. On day 6, Sarah dragged them to a wedding dress fitting, despite Olivia's protests that she'd already chosen a dress. You chose a dress before you had a fiancé. Now you need to choose a dress while looking at someone you actually love. Trust me, it makes a difference. The bridal boutique was all white silk and champagne, and sales associates who spoke in hushed, reverent tones. Olivia emerged from the dressing room in a gown that made Marcus forget how to breathe, simple, elegant, with a neckline that was both modest and devastating. "Well?" Olivia asked, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked uncertain. "You're beautiful," Marcus said honestly. Sarah made a noise that sounded suspiciously like a sniffle. "I need tissues and champagne, mostly champagne." After Olivia changed back, Sarah pulled Marcus aside. "She's different with you, softer. I didn't think anyone could get through to her like this." "Sarah." "No, listen." Her voice turned serious. "Liv's been hurt before. Not just by Jonathan, before that too. People who wanted the Sterling name more than they wanted her. People who saw her as a stepping stone or a trophy." She looked him directly in the eye. "If you're playing her, if this is some kind of con, I will destroy you. I don't care about your contracts or your agreements. I will end you." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "I'm not playing her." "Good, because she deserves someone who sees her, really sees her, and I think you do." She smiled, the warmth returning. "Don't screw it up." On day 7, Olivia took Marcus to visit her mother's grave. They drove in silence to a cemetery on the outskirts of the city, where old trees provided shade and headstones dated back 100 years. Margaret Sterling's grave was simple, gray marble, fresh flowers in the vase. "I come here every Sunday," Olivia said softly. "Tell her about the week, about the deals I've closed, the problems I've solved. Sometimes I ask her advice, even though I know she's not really listening." "How do you know she's not?" Olivia looked at him, surprised. "You believe in that? Afterlife, spirits, all of it?" "I don't know what I believe, but my mom used to say that the people we love never really leave us. They live on in the choices we make, the values they taught us." He knelt by the gravestone. "Hello, Mrs. Sterling. I'm Marcus. I'm going to marry your daughter in 3 days. I promise to take care of her, even though she's fully capable of taking care of herself. I promise to support her dreams even when they scare me, and I promise to never ask her to be less than she is." When he stood, Olivia was crying, silent tears tracking down her face. "She would have liked you," she whispered. On day 8, Marcus woke to find Olivia in his room, standing by the window in her silk robe, watching the sunrise.
Can't sleep? He asked. Keep thinking about tomorrow, about standing in front of everyone and lying? Is it still a lie? She asked, turning to face him. I don't know what this is anymore, Marcus. I don't know what we are. He got out of bed, crossed to stand beside her. What do you want us to be? She took a shaky breath. I want this to be real. I want to marry you because I choose to, not because some contract says I should. I want to wake up and not wonder if you're here because you need the money or because you actually want to be here. Olivia, he turned her to face him. The money stopped mattering around day 3, maybe sooner. I'm here because when I'm with you, I feel like I'm the person I was supposed to be. You make me want to be braver. You said that once, about wondering who you'd be if you were braver. I don't have to wonder anymore. I see who I am when I'm with you. She looked up at him, and in her eyes she saw fear and hope warring for dominance. I don't know how to do this, the real thing. I've never let anyone this close. Neither have I. We'll figure it out together. What if we fail? What if we don't? She kissed him then, or he kissed her. Later, neither of them would be sure who moved first. It was soft and tentative and terrifying, and it felt like jumping off a cliff with no idea if there was water below. When they pulled apart, Olivia was smiling, really smiling. Not the corporate smile or the polite smile, but something genuine and unguarded. 2 days, she said. 2 days, he agreed. The morning of the wedding arrived with cloudless blue skies and temperatures perfect enough to seem orchestrated. Marcus stood in a guest room at the Sterling estate, adjusting his tie for the 15th time when someone knocked on the door. Come in. Richard Sterling entered, leaning heavily on a cane, but with his spine straight and his eyes clear. Mr. Sterling, should you be walking around? It's my daughter's wedding day. I'll be damned if I spend it in bed. He settled into a chair with a careful grace. I wanted to talk to you before the ceremony. Marcus's heart rate kicked up. Of course. I'm dying, son. 2 months, maybe 3. The doctors are optimistic, but doctors are always optimistic. He smiled grimly. I wanted to tell you something about Olivia, about my daughter. Sir, let me finish. This is important. My hands trembled slightly on the cane's handle. When her mother died, Olivia was 12 years old. She cried for 3 days straight. Then she stopped. Just stopped. Got up, went to school, got perfect grades, never cried again where anyone could see. She learned to be strong by learning to be alone. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. I did that to her, Richard continued. I was so lost in my own grief that I didn't see what I was teaching her, that emotions are weakness, that vulnerability is failure. I built a brilliant, fierce, extraordinary daughter who doesn't know how to let people in. Until you. Sir, I don't... Richard, call me Richard. You're family now. He stood, steadying himself on the cane. Take care of her, Marcus, and let her take care of you. That's what marriage is. 2 people being strong for each other, being vulnerable with each other. Don't make the mistakes I made. I won't, I promise. Richard clasped his shoulder. Good man. Now, I believe you have a wedding to get to. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m. in the garden. By 3:30 p.m., 200 guests had filled the white chairs arranged in neat rows. Fairy lights were twinkling in the trees despite the daylight, and a string quartet was playing something classical and beautiful. Marcus stood at the altar, a simple arch covered in white roses, with his hands clasped to keep them from shaking. The officiant, a family friend of the Sterlings, smiled encouragingly. Behind Marcus, the business associate he'd recruited as best man, they'd met twice, shifted his weight nervously. The quartet transitioned to Paco Bell's canon. Everyone stood. And then Olivia appeared at the end of the aisle, her hand tucked into her father's elbow. She was devastating. The dress, the flowers in her hair, the way the afternoon sun caught in her dark eyes. But more than that, the way she looked at him, like he was the only person in the world, like this was real. Maybe it was. Richard walked slowly, each step measured and careful. Olivia matched his pace, patient and gentle. When they reached the altar, Richard placed Olivia's hand in Marcus's. Take care of my girl, he whispered. Always, Marcus whispered back.
Richard kissed Olivia's cheek and took his seat in the front row where a nurse waited with his wheelchair. The officiant began, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." Marcus barely heard the words. He was too focused on Olivia's face, on the way her hand trembled slightly in his, on the way she was looking at him like he hung the moon. "Marcus and Olivia have prepared their own vows," the officiant said. This wasn't in the plan. They'd agreed to traditional vows, simple, impersonal, safe. But Olivia was pulling a folded paper from somewhere in her dress.
And suddenly Marcus understood. Plans had changed. "Marcus," she began, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "3 weeks ago, you walked into my life with a coffee-stained shirt and more dignity than any millionaire I've ever met. You didn't know it yet, but you were about to save me, not from bankruptcy or hostile takeovers, but from myself, from a life where everything was a transaction and nothing was real." Her voice wavered. She steadied it. "You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, that letting someone in doesn't mean losing control, that love, real love, isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who sees your imperfections and chooses you anyway." She folded the paper with shaking hands. "I choose you, Marcus Daniel, every day, for all my days. Not because a will says I should, not because it's strategic or practical or good for business, but because my life is better with you in it." Marcus's eyes burned. He hadn't prepared vows, hadn't thought he'd need them, but looking at her now, the words came. "Olivia," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "you told me once that you don't know how to be human, but you're the most human person I know. You laugh at bad jokes, you cry at your mother's grave, you fight for what you believe in even when it's hard. You're brilliant and terrifying, and you make me want to be brave enough to deserve you." He took both her hands in his. "3 weeks ago, I walked into an interview with nothing but desperation and a prayer. I walked out with a job offer and something I never expected, a chance at a life I'd stopped believing I could have. A chance to live, not just survive." His voice broke. "I choose you too, Olivia Sterling. Not because I need to, because I want to. Because you're extraordinary, and I want to spend my life watching you change the world." Olivia was crying now, tears streaming freely down her face. Sarah was sobbing in the front row. Even Richard had pulled out a handkerchief. "The rings?" the officiant prompted gently. They exchanged rings, simple platinum bands that Olivia had chosen last week. Marcus's hand shook as he slid the ring onto her finger. Hers was steady as she slid his into place. "By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Marcus cupped Olivia's face in his hands, wiping away tears with his thumbs. "Hi, wife," he whispered. "Hi, husband," she whispered back. The kiss was soft and sweet and real. So real. The guests erupted in applause. Marcus and Olivia just made a choice to turn their arrangement into something real. Sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. Have you ever started something one way and watched it transform into something completely different? Share your transformation stories in the comments. We'd love to hear them.
The reception was a blur of champagne toasts and classical music, of well-wishers and business associates offering congratulations that ranged from genuine to calculating. Marcus shook hands until his palm ached, smiled until his face hurt, and danced with Olivia under fairy lights that made everything feel like a dream. "Are you okay?" she whispered during their first dance, her head resting against his shoulder. "I just married a woman I met 3 weeks ago. I'm either the bravest man alive or the biggest fool." "Can't you be both?" He laughed, spinning her gently. "Yeah, I think I can." Sarah cornered them during dinner, her mascara slightly smudged from happy tears. I'm just saying, if I'd known you were gonna write vows like that, I would have brought more tissues, like a whole box, maybe 2 boxes. Sarah, Olivia began. No, seriously, my life is better with you in it? Are you kidding me right now? She fanned her face dramatically. I'm calling it now. You two are going to be disgustingly happy together, like the kind of couple other couples hate because you're too perfect. We're not perfect, Marcus said. No one is, but you're perfect for each other. There's a difference. She hugged them both, fierce and tight. I'm so happy for you guys. So happy. As evening deepened into night, Richard approached them at the head table. He looked exhausted but content, his face peaceful in a way Marcus hadn't seen before. "Dance with your old man?" he asked Olivia, extending a trembling hand. "Dad, you should rest." "I'll rest when I'm dead, which, given current projections, will be relatively soon. Humor me." Olivia took his hand, and Marcus watched as father and daughter moved slowly across the dance floor. Richard's steps were careful, measured, but his spine was straight and his hands steady on his daughter's back. They swayed more than danced, and Marcus could see Olivia speaking quietly, her face pressed close to her father's ear. When the song ended, Richard kissed her forehead and whispered something that made Olivia nod, tears streaming down her face again. Later, as guests began to filter out into the night, Richard pulled Marcus aside one final time. "Thank you," he said simply, "for loving her, for seeing who she really is." "She's easy to love, sir." "Richard, no, she's not. She's difficult and demanding, and she'll probably drive you crazy at least 3 times a week, but she's worth it." He smiled, tired but genuine. Take care of each other. That's all that matters in the end. Finding someone worth taking care of and letting them take care of you. I will. We will. Richard clasped his hand, his grip surprisingly strong. Good. Now take my daughter home. You both look exhausted. They left the reception at midnight, slipping out while the remaining guests danced and drank champagne under the stars. Olivia drove, her wedding dress somehow not wrinkled despite hours of wear, her hair coming loose from its pins in ways that made her look younger, softer. "Where are we going?" asked Marcus. They'd passed the turn for the penthouse 5 minutes ago. "You'll see." She drove them to the coast, to a stretch of beach that was private and empty, lit only by the moon and stars. She parked in a sandy lot and kicked off her heels, gathering her dress in one hand. "Come on." They walked down to the water's edge, where waves lapped gently at the shore, and the city lights were distant enough to be beautiful instead of harsh. Olivia stood at the water's edge, her bare feet in the surf, her dress billowing around her. She looked like something out of a painting. "I used to come here with my mother, before she died. We'd walk along the beach and she'd tell me stories about when she was young, before she married Dad, before the company became everything. She used to say that the ocean was the only thing that made her feel small in a good way, like all her problems were tiny compared to something so vast and eternal." I joined her at the water's edge, taking her hand. "Do you feel small now?" "No, I feel..." She struggled for the word. "I feel found, like I'd been lost for years and didn't even know it, and then you walked into that hallway and everything suddenly made sense. That's how I feel too." They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the waves. "Marcus," Olivia said eventually, "what we said today, the vows, the promises, I meant all of it. This isn't a contract anymore. This isn't an arrangement. This is real." "I know. So what happens now?" He thought about it, about the penthouse waiting for them, about Sterling Global and the life they'd build together, about all the unknowns that stretched ahead like this ocean, vast and full of possibility. "Now, we go home. We start our life. We figure out how to be married, how to be partners, how to be us." "That sounds terrifying." "It does, doesn't it?" She smiled, squeezing his hand. "But less terrifying with you.
That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. Don't get used to it. I'm still terrible at romance. Good. I like you terrible at things. It means you're human. She laughed, that real unguarded laugh she'd heard more in the past 9 days than in all the time before, and pulled him into a kiss that tasted like salt air and champagne and new beginnings. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. Take me home, husband. Anything for you, wife.
A go? She asked, handing him a glass. The night I proposed our arrangement? You mean the night you demanded I be your husband? Semantics, she smiled. Did you ever imagine we'd end up here? Marcus looked around, at the garden where they'd gotten married, at their daughter laughing in the sunshine, at his wife's hand resting protectively on her belly. No, I imagined surviving, maybe building something stable. I never imagined... What? This. Happiness, a family, a life that feels like living instead of just not dying. He pulled her close, careful of her belly. You saved me, Liv. That day in the hallway, you saved my life. No, we saved each other. She kissed him softly. I was drowning in my own armor, and you taught me how to take it off. We saved each other. Daddy! Margaret came running, holding a butterfly that had landed on her finger. Look, she picked me. She has good taste, Marcus said, kneeling down to examine the butterfly. Just like her daddy did, Olivia added, winking. Margaret looked between her parents, not understanding, but delighted by their happiness. Can we have cake now? It's Saturday. Saturday is cake day. Since when is Saturday cake day? Marcus asked. Since now, I decided. Olivia laughed. Well, if you decided, then it must be true. Let's go find cake. They walked back to the house together, Marcus carrying Margaret on his shoulders, Olivia's hand in his. And if you'd asked Marcus Daniel in that moment what happiness looked like, he would have pointed to this. His daughter's laughter, his wife's smile, the promise of another child on the way, and a future that was nothing like he'd planned, but everything he'd ever needed. 5 years ago, a woman had demanded he be her husband in a hallway of a corporate tower. He'd said yes to survive. He stayed because he'd learned to live. And in the end, that made all the difference. The end.